The Mandela Effect is when a large group of people remember something differently than it is now. And today, I'm finally answering the question, what caused the Mandela Effect? This has been a debate for years and years with many compelling arguments. And today, I have 10 explanations for you, and we're going to go through all of them. Listen carefully to each of the arguments, and at the end, I want you to tell me which one makes the most sense to you. Timestamps are in the description if you'd like to jump around. So without further ado, like, subscribe, Patreon, and let's get into it. CERN is one of the world's largest centers for scientific research. The name CERN originates from the French phrase Conseil Européen pour la Recherche Nucléaire, which translates to the European Council for Nuclear Research. CERN was established in 1954 and is located on the border between France and Switzerland, near Geneva. This organization has the world's largest and most powerful particle accelerator. The stated goal of CERN is to study fundamental particles by colliding protons and other particles at incredibly high speeds, allowing scientists to investigate the apparent forces that hold the universe together. So what makes people feel so nervous when it comes to CERN? For one, it's a massive facility working on research that challenges our understanding of the universe. It's the highest level of science, which is mostly unknown to the majority of the population of the world. This could be the cause of so much anxiety for some. There's also the fear of unintended consequences that might occur from CERN's experiments.
There are detractors. On YouTube, you get this. Some fear the experiment will create a black hole that will swallow the Earth. But CERN says this will not happen. Scientists say a microscopic black hole is possible, and this is what it might look like. But it would be too small and too unstable, winking out of existence in a matter of seconds.
Now, why do people think CERN caused the Mandela Effect? Some people online believe that when CERN started up the Large Hadron Collider, it may have done more than just collide particles. These people speculate that by smashing atoms at near-light speeds, CERN accidentally shifted or merged parallel realities and created the Mandela Effect. It's a bold claim that would require a lot of evidence to prove, so let's look into what CERN has actually accomplished and see if there's anything there. CERN discovered the Higgs boson particle, built the Large Hadron Collider, created the World Wide Web, and even made the first website. But did it cause the Mandela Effect? That's the big question. While there's no direct evidence, it's been claimed by some that the timing of new Mandela effects coincides with CERN's experiments. The most interesting argument for CERN's involvement in the Mandela Effect, at least from a hypothetical standpoint, is this really creepy theory. So imagine this. The world was actually set to end in 2012, and CERN's entire purpose and creation was to find a way to save our reality. The idea is that it worked, and they saved our reality. But as a result, we jump to another timeline where the world didn't end in 2012. The insane Mandela effects we've all been discovering and experiencing were the result. Not to mention all the insanity that has happened over the last decade plus. I'm sure many of you have felt that the world has been out of control for a while now. Think about how everything changed since 2012. Politics, social media, mass cell phone adoption, digital addiction, the dead internet theory, mass social unease. It feels like the world just snapped over the last decade. Does this mean CERN caused the Mandela Effect? Let me hear your thoughts below. False memory, or bad memory, is the most widely used scientific explanation for the Mandela Effect. The claim is that everyone is wrong and is simply misremembering all these details the same way all over the world. That it's all just a massive coincidence, and it comes from the fallibility of human memory. The idea is that our brains are incredible, but far from perfect. These false memories arise when we confuse details or when memories blend with other events or information. Memory is apparently less reliable than you might think. Studies have shown that our memories are not only fallible, but can be astonishingly inaccurate. For instance, the forgetting curve concept, pioneered by Hermann Ebbinghaus, illustrates that without reinforcement, people forget approximately 50 to 80% of new information within days. What happens is that memory retention declines quickly without reinforcement, with up to 80% of information forgotten within days. This loss of information and memory happens rapidly before tapering off, which suggests that the more you review something, the more likely it is to be remembered. Ebbinghaus's studies emphasize that repeated learning sessions can significantly flatten this curve and enhance long-term memory retention, which makes one wonder if the Mandela Effect is simply a case of not remembering every detail. So is it possible that hundreds of memory errors could be misinterpreted as a much more profound phenomenon? This makes up the mainstream argument against the Mandela Effect. Its entire basis is that these hundreds and hundreds of examples of the Mandela Effect are actually not true, and we all just collectively misremembered them. Another angle regarding the idea of bad memory is memory manipulation. Memory manipulation is another fascinating and somewhat unsettling phenomenon. It can occur both unintentionally and intentionally through techniques such as suggestion and manipulation. Memory researchers have long speculated that certain tactics may lead people to recall crimes that never occurred, and thus could potentially lead to false confessions. In fact, in a 2015 study, researchers used techniques that led about 70% of participants to develop false memories of having committed a crime in their youth, and this was only after 3 interviews. As bizarre as this sounds, it's true. With suggestive memory retrieval techniques, participants were induced to generate criminal and non-criminal emotional false memories. Then these false memories were compared to true memories of actual emotional events. The conclusion was that 70% of participants were classified as having false memories of committing a crime, such as theft, assault, or assault with a weapon, that led to police contact in early adolescence. Not only that, those 70% of participants actually volunteered a detailed false account of what happened, even though those events never actually happened. Meaning suggestion seemingly created these false events. The reported false memories of crimes were similar to false memories of non-criminal events and to true memory accounts, which showed that these false memories even had the same kinds of complex descriptive and multisensory components as their real memories. It appears that in the context of a highly suggestive interview, people can quite readily generate detailed false memories of committing crime. It was the first study to provide evidence suggesting that false memories of committing crime could be generated in a controlled experimental setting. So we know for a fact that these collective false memories emerge, but the real question is, why do so many people remember the same event or fact inaccurately? That's the puzzling part to all of this, and I'd argue is the biggest weakness to this argument. Are the similarities in these false memories nothing more than coincidence? Does this mean false memory caused the Mandela Effect? Could all of the hundreds of Mandela Effect examples simply be the failings of human memory? This one is going to get complex, but I'm going to do my best to make it make sense. You see, at the quantum level, particles behave in ways that defy conventional thinking and understanding. The principles of quantum superposition and entanglement suggest that all possibilities exist simultaneously until observed. Meaning your reality as well as my reality might just both exist. It's a strange concept, but elements of quantum theory actually back this up. To understand this concept better, we need to understand both objective reality and subjective reality. In the simplest terms, objective reality is the way things are, without any person's thoughts or feelings affecting it. It is the truth, whether people know it or believe it. Then there is subjective reality, and that is how people see things based on their own thoughts and feelings. So when we speak of objective reality, we all agree that this is the truth. This is how something is. But what if it isn't? The big deal with the Mandela Effect is that the truth sometimes seems to not be so clear-cut. While a ton of people might remember one thing being one way, in reality, that thing is actually something else. The clash between these things is what makes the Mandela Effect so fascinating and so confusing. So what if objective reality wasn't actually objective? There has been a hypothesis regarding this very idea for decades. Originally proposed by the Nobel Prize-winning physicist Eugene Wigner. You see, back in 1961, he outlined a thought experiment that demonstrated one of the lesser-known paradoxes of quantum mechanics. The experiment, known as Wigner's Friend, is a thought experiment in quantum mechanics that raises questions about the nature of reality and the observer's role in it. The thought experiment goes as follows. Wigner has a friend who performs an experiment measuring the spin of an electron. In this thought experiment, Wigner is outside of the lab and doesn't know the outcome of the experiment. From Wigner's point of view, the electron is in a superposition of spin states, meaning the electron is both up and down, until his friend takes the measurements and collapses the wave function. However, from his friend's point of view, the electron had a definite spin from the moment the measurement was made. Totally simple, right? This thought experiment illustrates the idea of observer-dependent reality, where the state of a physical system can change depending on the observer and the act of measurement. This obviously raises questions regarding the relationship between consciousness and physical reality. Both Wigner and his friend observed the same electron, but each one had different descriptions of that electron based on their proximity and role. Now, this raises questions regarding the relationship between consciousness and physical reality. Both Wigner and his friend observed the same electron, but each had different descriptions of that electron based on their proximity and role. This thought experiment raises questions about how we see reality, and whether or not there is one reality or different realities depending on who is observing it. It also questions the role of consciousness in shaping our understanding of the physical world. All of that to explain that this was just a thought experiment and nothing more. Until 2018, when humanity finally had the capability to actually try out this experiment. And guess what? Wigner was right. His hypothesis suggested that there is no objective reality. And as usual, this sounds pretty out there. But this concept has been suspected for a long time by physicists, that quantum mechanics allow two observers to experience different, conflicting realities, and this modern experiment proved it. It was conducted for the first time at the Heriot-Watt University in Edinburgh. The experiment resulted in creating different realities to different observers, then comparing them. The conclusion was that Wigner was correct. Get this, these realities can be made irreconcilable, so that it is impossible to agree on objective facts about an experiment. The Mandela Effect could be a reflection of the ongoing debate between objective and subjective reality. Experiments such as Wigner's friend have led some scientists to believe that there is no single objective reality, only multiple subjective experiences. Meaning reality is, well, kind of what you make it. Could it be that timelines themselves are subjective, and as our collective consciousness evolves, our timelines change to match new perspectives? If reality is not fixed, but rather in a constantly shifting patchwork of individual perceptions, then it makes sense that different people might remember different versions of history. It's a truly mind-blowing concept to consider. I don't know about you, but my mind is blown. Absolutely incredible stuff. This means reality isn't always as clear-cut as we have imagined and speculated it to be. It's possible that the correct answer to one perspective is not always the correct answer to another. So is it possible that objective reality not actually being objective might be the cause of the Mandela Effect? Perhaps this alternative view that so many people have suffered from isn't actually just millions of people being wrong about millions of things, it's that what they saw or heard actually was different. It's truly a fascinating thought, perhaps too fascinating. The experiment produced an unambiguous result. It turns out that both realities can coexist even though they produce irreconcilable outcomes, just as Wigner predicted, which raises some fascinating questions that are now forcing physicists to reconsider the nature of reality. The idea of objective reality relies on three assumptions: agreeable reality, freedom of choice, locality. What does any of that mean? Let me explain. That universal facts actually exist and that observers can agree on them. That observers have the freedom to make whatever observations they want. The choices one observer makes do not influence the choices other observers make. Physicists call this locality. The idea of objective reality relies on these three assumptions: agreeable reality, freedom of choice, locality. If objective reality is, well, real, then these assumptions must all hold. But this experiment proves that one or more of these assumptions must be wrong. These results suggest that objective reality does not exist. Now just think about the implications of this in regards to science. The scientific method relies on established facts acquired by repeated measurements and agreed upon universally and independently of those who observe them. Yet here we are, with fundamentally contradictory results that potentially undermine this very idea. This is why quantum physics is such a fascinating field of study. It's typically made up of difficult to initially conceive and conceptualize ideas, but also has the potential to completely upend everything we know as humans. So what's next for testing objective reality? Well, scientists will have to construct experiments that create increasingly bizarre alternative realities that cannot be reconciled. How and when will this happen? Well, that's the fun part of science. It's anyone's guess. I'm just a layman in regards to all of this, but one direction scientists can look to is the Mandela Effect. Questioning the nature of objective reality was once laughed at as nothing more than a silly thought experiment. But here we are, evidence to support that everything isn't as it seems. The Mandela Effect is regarded by many out there as a silly concept that has been ridiculed as nothing more than people having false memories. But what if that isn't correct? What if it's more than that? There has only been one study that has looked into the Mandela Effect, and it came to the conclusion that these memories people have are real, but where they're coming from, and how so many people share such similar memories, well, no one knows for certain. It's a goldmine of potential new scientific discoveries, and I think instead of being ridiculed, it needs to be looked into. The Wigner's friend hypothesis reminds me of the famous double-slit experiment, because both suggest consciousness plays an important role in reality, and as such, both would help to support the concept of the Mandela Effect. Here is how the double-slit experiment and the Wigner's friend hypothesis are related in this manner. In the double-slit experiment, it is observed that the behavior of a particle changes depending on whether or not it is being observed, which is honestly terrifying. A particle doing something different when it's being watched versus when it isn't? What? In the same way, the Wigner's friend hypothesis suggests that the act of measurement changes the observer's perception of reality, and thus creates a different reality of the system being observed. Put simply, both of these ideas suggest that consciousness plays a role in the behavior of matter at the quantum level. Meaning, if things change when we aren't looking, and reality isn't actually objective, the Mandela Effect isn't such a crazy idea after all. And to take things further, could our reality be in a quantum state where multiple versions of the past and present exist at once? The Mandela Effect might be a glimpse into these strange and hard to understand quantum fluctuations, where different possibilities converge in and out of reality, causing people to experience different versions of reality. It's a theory that borders on the incomprehensible, but aligns with some of the most cutting-edge ideas in modern physics. Does this mean quantum theory caused the Mandela Effect? For decades, people have noticed their memories don't always match reality. But what if it wasn't just a glitch? What if the government itself was behind these shifts in our collective memory? Governments have a long history of attempting to control public perception and behavior. During the Cold War, covert government projects sought to gain an advantage over perceived enemies by manipulating the minds of their own citizens. One of the most infamous of these was MK-Ultra, a CIA program that experimented with mind control and psychological manipulation. These experiments into mind control used a variety of methods: psychedelic drugs, sensory deprivation, electroshock treatment, and more. Millions of dollars were secretly funneled into these experiments, often without the knowledge or consent of the subjects. This is not just the stuff of fiction, it's a documented fact. Given this history, it isn't a stretch to think that governments could be running sophisticated, covert operations today aimed at altering people's memories on a massive scale, thus creating a collective illusion like the Mandela Effect. The government also exerts significant influence over the media, which plays a crucial role in shaping what people believe to be true. For example, government agencies often partner with social media platforms to promote specific content, particularly during crises. This algorithmic curation is unbelievably powerful in this digital age, as it shapes public discourse. Regaining the narrative and controlling the narrative is government 101 these days. By amplifying certain content and deprioritizing or removing others, this form of censorship influences what people remember or believe about current events. Consider Operation Mockingbird, a covert CIA operation that began in the 1950s and saw intelligence agents working with major news outlets to control the narrative and influence public opinion. The overall goal of this operation never ended. Nearly every major media outlet today has former CIA officers in their ranks. I'm talking Google, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Amazon, OpenAI, the New York Times, CNN, NBC, Fox News. The list alone is so long that it could be an entire video. The idea of influencing the masses through controlled information isn't a theory. It's a fact that has been exposed and confirmed. Today, over 90% of the US media is owned by just a few corporations, allowing a very small group to dictate the stories told to millions. The government is actively collaborating with these media giants and altering, censoring, and distorting historical facts, influencing what people believe they know about the past. Imagine subtle shifts in narratives across news, entertainment, and even social media that change our perception of key historical events. The result of this would be contributing to the phenomenon known as the Mandela Effect. The idea of deliberately implanting false memories may sound like science fiction, but psychological research has shown it's entirely possible. Elizabeth Loftus, a leading expert in memory research, conducted many studies that demonstrated how false memories could be implanted. In one famous 1995 study, 25% of participants were actually convinced that they had a false memory of being lost in a shopping mall as a child. Elizabeth Loftus called the study existence proof for the phenomenon of false memory creation and manipulation. When governments have access to massive amounts of data on individuals, and modern technologies that can influence people through suggestion, such as targeted media content and subliminal cues, the possibility of altering collective memory becomes very real. It's not just a question of whether they can do it, but why wouldn't they use these techniques if it served a political purpose or helped maintain control? The Mandela Effect could also be a deliberate strategy used by the government to distract the public. Imagine if a powerful entity wanted to keep people from paying attention to what really mattered: scandals, corruption, or systemic failures. By sowing doubt about shared memories, governments might succeed in creating a sense of confusion and distraction. Historical precedent exists for this type of manipulation. During the Cold War, misinformation campaigns were used to divert attention and maintain public control. Today, the Mandela Effect could be a similar tactic, an elaborate ruse to keep people questioning their own memories rather than questioning authority. The concept of manufactured confusion is a powerful tool. When people aren't sure what's real, they're less likely to unite and resist. Whether it's deliberate psychological manipulation, media control, or something even more insidious, the idea that the Mandela Effect could be orchestrated by powerful forces is hard to ignore. Imagine this. You're in a life or death situation. Let's say it's a car crash to simplify the example. In the split second before your death, your mind doesn't just cease to exist. Instead, it shifts into a parallel universe where you survive. This is the essence of quantum immortality. According to this theory, every time you're on the brink of death, your consciousness transfers to an alternate reality. From your perspective, you never died. You just keep living in a slightly altered version of the world. And here's the thing, each new reality comes with small changes. Details that don't quite line up with what you remember. Does this theory explain what so many have felt? That something feels so off, something you can't quite put your finger on. Quantum immortality might offer an answer. If you've slipped from one timeline to another, that unsettling feeling could stem from memories that don't fully align with the reality you're now living in. The world that you remember, the one that really felt like home, is gone. This is how quantum immortality could potentially explain the Mandela Effect. Think about it. If you've shifted between realities multiple times to avoid death, you just might carry fragments of memories from those other universes. These seemingly untrue memories could explain the Mandela Effect. This could also explain the wide variety of changes people have experienced. But here's where it gets even creepier. If quantum immortality is real, it means that it's not only you shifting between realities, but also everyone around you. Are these really the same people? Or are they slightly different versions of your friends and family from this alternate timeline? Are their memories the exact same? Or are there minor or major differences? And here's an even scarier thought. What if the original versions of those people, the ones you fell in love with or formed deep connections with, are long gone? Would you ever truly know? How would that realization affect your relationships? Would it create an unshakable sense of dread, knowing the people you love might not be the real versions of themselves? Quantum immortality isn't just a cool sci-fi idea. It's built on real concepts in quantum mechanics. The many worlds interpretation suggests that every single decision splits into a new universe, and quantum immortality takes it in an even more narrow direction, by saying the timeline split only happens when you die. For example, let's say in one universe you narrowly avoid a car crash on the highway. In another universe, the car crash happens and you pass away, but you're no longer aware of it, because your consciousness has shifted to the reality where you survived. But this raises an unsettling question. What happens to the you left behind in the original timeline? For everyone in that reality, you're gone. A memory, a tragedy. From your perspective, it's just another day, but does that mean you've effectively died? And if that's the case, how many times have you already died in realities you'll never know existed? Are all the lives that have passed on in this world just examples of people who have shifted to another reality? This also raises ethical dilemmas. If you're slipping into another timeline, are you replacing the consciousness that was already there? What if that version of you had their own life, their own memories, and their own relationships? Do they vanish the moment you arrive, or are they overwritten completely? It's a terrifying thought that surviving might come at the cost of erasing another version of yourself. But what if it's worse than that? What if you are the overwritten one? One day you wake up, and something feels off, like something was wrong, but you don't know what or why you feel that way. Imagine this. Your memories are intact, but tiny details seem to be out of place. People remembering things you did or things you said that you swear you don't remember saying or doing. Small and subtle changes that begin to stack up. So you start looking for answers, theories, concepts, anything to make it make sense. Is this simply our minds glitching? Is this nothing more than a symptom of the Mandela Effect? Or could it be quantum immortality? And if it is, what then is the process of merging with yourself? Is your original consciousness overwritten? Like saving over a previous save on a computer? This is where I'd like to introduce the concept of Capgras syndrome. First discovered in 1923 by French psychiatrist Joseph Capgras. If you wanted to pronounce it in French, it's Joseph Capgras. Capgras syndrome, or delusion of doubles, is an apparent delusional misidentification syndrome. Put simply, it's a rare psychological condition where someone believes that a close family member, friend, or pet has been replaced by an identical imposter. One common expression of Capgras delusion involves the spouse of the patient, who believes that an imposter of the same sex as their spouse has taken over his or her body. Essentially, they're convinced that the person they are with is not actually the person they're supposed to be. It's as if their loved one was taken over by someone else. An even rarer delusion is when a person misidentifies him or herself as the imposter.
2 years ago, David was involved in a terrible car accident.
There was a problem with the car, and I landed in the highway with my head first.
For 5 weeks, David lay in a coma. Serious injuries led to the loss of his right arm, but to everyone's relief, when he regained consciousness, his mental capacities seemed to be intact.
He was articulate, he was intelligent, not obviously psychotic or emotionally disturbed. He could read a newspaper. Everything seemed fine, except he had one profound delusion. He would look at his mother, and he would say, "This woman, doctor, she looks exactly like my mother. But in fact, she's not my mother. She's an imposter. She's some other woman pretending to be my mother."
I was cooking dinner, and he probably didn't like the food that night.
Okay.
And he said, the lady who comes in the morning, she cooks much better than you. It's that lady. I like that lady very much. But the lady was me, of course, all the time.
David was also convinced that his father was an imposter.
He would say to his dad, I'm sure you would like to meet this guy. He's so much like you, but he drives better. He doesn't go so fast.
Tell me that doesn't sound just like quantum immortality. You've got to admit how eerie and unsettling all this is. It's like a psychological scar is left behind when the consciousness doesn't perfectly align. Think about the numerous reports of people miraculously gaining skills they've never had before. Someone going to sleep and waking up with the ability to play an instrument, or waking up and speaking a foreign language fluently, or recalling details of places they've never visited before. Are these skills remnants of overwritten versions of themselves leaking through? It's extremely unsettling to consider this possibility. Let's take a step back and play devil's advocate. Could quantum immortality all be a psychological coping mechanism? Humans have always found ways to avoid facing mortality, whether it's religious beliefs, an afterlife, reincarnation, or even ghosts. Maybe quantum immortality is just another comforting concept. Are we simply grasping at straws to avoid the fear we have of the unknown? Let's assume that quantum immortality is real. How would death actually work in this universe? I feel as though death would arrive in one of two ways. The first being subjective continuity. Essentially, your consciousness would continue in an alternate universe where you survive your fatal event. From your perspective, you would have never experienced death, but rather continued to exist. I suppose in this explanation, you'd never die, you'd just keep going. Now, whether this means the same life or an alternative life, we really don't know. The second way would be a gradual decline, as if the fire or ember that keeps your consciousness going is slowly wearing out across lifetimes. Max Tegmark, a professor of physics at MIT, suggests that dying is not a binary event, but rather a gradual process. This suggests that while one might avoid sudden death, they might experience a continuous decline in health or consciousness across different universes. Tegmark notes that the fading of consciousness is a continuous process, indicating that perhaps you don't just die at one point, but rather gently fade away, over time and across universes. I'm not sure if you recognized Max Tegmark's name, but I've quoted him before in my 5 Reasons We Live in a Simulation series. He always brings such a fascinating perspective to weird and out there topics like this. But this raises an unsettling question. What happened to the you that originally existed in this new timeline? Are you replacing yourself, or are you overwriting yourself entirely? And if that's true, what about your family and friends in these alternate universes? Are they really your family and friends, or are they just similar copies of them? This strange theory might even offer an explanation for why some historical events feel so off. Every time we dodge death and shift into a new reality, the differences can really add up. The timeline we live in right now might have small inconsistencies compared to where we started. Speaking of which, where did we start? How much have things changed since the beginning? This theory is both horrifying and fascinating, and creates just as many questions as it does answers. Is death not the end, but rather a save file? Just as when you die in a video game, it instantly loads back to a previous save. Are the memories we carry just remnants of other lives we've lived? And if quantum immortality is real, what does that mean for the future of humanity? This theory isn't just about fear, it's also about hope. If quantum immortality is true, it means you could potentially never experience death. Your life might continue indefinitely, shifting from one reality to the next. Some would call it a blessing, and others a nightmare. But again, none of us really know. Does this mean quantum immortality caused the Mandela Effect? Let's look into the idea that the Mandela Effect is caused by time travel. To start, assume for a second that time travel is hypothetically possible, meaning even the smallest changes to the past could have ripple effects that alter the present. The Mandela Effect could possibly be a consequence of time travelers interfering with the past, and thus changing seemingly insignificant details that lead to subtle and potentially major shifts in our current reality. Now let's take it a step further. Could some of our memories be from an alternate timeline, before someone went back and changed history? As in, what we remember could have been correct, but now isn't because of changes caused by time travel. But before we get too deep into the hypotheticals, let me first explain time travel and how it could potentially work. Time travel is defined as the act of traveling through time into the past or the future. As of now, scientists theorize that time travel can be split into 3 potential ways: a fixed timeline, a dynamic timeline, or a multiverse timeline. So I'm going to break down each of these for you right now. A fixed timeline proposes that time is linear and set in stone. Any changes you make to the past won't matter because we will ultimately end up with the same result. Let's say you make it so that the creator of the soda, Dr. Pepper, never made Dr. Pepper. A fixed timeline is where, even then, somehow, the person that is supposed to create Dr. Pepper still creates Dr. Pepper, and your actions made no difference. You traveling back in time and modifying things was already a part of the timeline, and you are simply fulfilling your predetermined role. Meaning it might be cool to have a time machine and to feel like you're making a change, but in actuality, everything you're doing is exactly what was supposed to happen. Because of everything I've explained, I feel like the Mandela Effect has the least chance of existing on a fixed timeline. Time travel interference wouldn't change anything outside of exactly what was supposed to happen. I'm sure someone out there could speculate an example where the Mandela Effect could exist, but this kind of timeline seems like the most unlikely. The second potential way time travel could exist is the dynamic timeline. Any changes you made to the past will absolutely affect the future. Let's use Dr. Pepper again. If you make it so that the creator of Dr. Pepper never made Dr. Pepper, we simply wouldn't have Dr. Pepper today. Perhaps some other brand would have taken its place. Perhaps Coke or Pepsi would instead have gained a larger market share. Whatever the case, the change in the past absolutely has an effect on the future. In a dynamic timeline, the Mandela Effect makes perfect sense. Changes to the past will cause differences in the future. The third theory of time travel is the multiverse timeline. The multiverse timeline theorizes an infinite number of parallel universes. Because of this, your actions will only have an effect on whatever timeline you're on. So for example, let's use Dr. Pepper one last time. In the multiverse, every combination of Dr. Pepper existing, not existing, being slightly different, being vastly different, and every other differing variation exists in some timeline. In the multiverse timeline, the Mandela Effect could be perfectly explained by saying we are shifting back and forth through parallel timelines. Shifting to a different timeline could result in vast differences, or something as simple as a logo being slightly different. It's a really goofy thought, but that's the theory. Now that the timelines are explained, we can go deeper into this concept. We could argue the theoretical possibility of time travel using a dynamic timeline or a multiverse timeline, as well as the insane potential implications of each regarding the Mandela Effect. So to keep this video from being 3 hours long, I'm moving forward with a very simple blanket statement. Here's that statement. If time travel exists and is used at some point in the future to return to the past, then it is safe to assume time travel exists right now. Someone walking around today could be of another time entirely, and more than likely, we'd never know it. So assuming that's the case, where does the Mandela Effect come in? Am I implying that the Kit Kat logo changed because some future person in the past drew an extra dash? No, nothing that specific and silly. But if this theory is to be believed, we need to understand the butterfly effect and how that's the key that ties all this together. The butterfly effect is essentially defined as a small change in the past can over time create a big change. The idea that the death of a butterfly could eventually have a far-reaching ripple effect on subsequent historical events made its earliest known appearance in a 1952 short story by Ray Bradbury called A Sound of Thunder. Today we're solely looking at the butterfly effect in relation to time travel. Imagine today there is a barren and empty field. Now imagine someone went back in time 100 years ago and planted seeds all across that empty field. Now, in the present day, that field could be covered in plant life. Trees, bushes, grass, flowers, all kinds of life. A vastly different outcome than when we started. All this to say is that a small change can have rippling effects in time. Here is a geographical real-world example of the butterfly effect. In the Republic of Chad, in Central Africa, on the outskirts of the Sahara Desert, there is a valley called the Bodele Depression. It was once a lake that died long ago. But dig far enough into the ground, and its soil is still filled with nutrient-rich matter, from microorganisms that lived there in the past. From October to March, winds from the east pass between two mountain ranges and across this ancient lake bed. When the winds climb to over 20 miles per hour, they pick up that ancient dust from the Bodele Depression. This dust is blown west all the way across Africa and out across the Atlantic Ocean. That dirt, soil, and debris from that one small valley in the Republic of Chad supplies over 50% of the nutrient-rich dust that fertilizes the Amazon rainforest. Meaning, an ancient lake between two mountain ranges dying off tens of thousands of years ago is the cause of the Amazon rainforest we know today. Imagine that for a second. A dying lake in Africa created the Amazon rainforest in South America. That's one incredible geographical example of the butterfly effect. But what about more human examples? A young man of artistic talent spends all of his time and effort creating art. Now this young man lives in a place and time of massive economic uncertainty. The future seems bleak for most people like him because of a previous war and its truth and reconciliation. He applies at a prestigious art school in Vienna, but fails to get accepted. Instead of moving forward in life and continuing his art, he took a different path, which led him to a much darker outcome. This man was Adolf Hitler, former leader of the Nazi Party. Like most alternative history, it's impossible to know for sure. But we can speculate that if Hitler had been accepted to art school, perhaps his life and the lives of tens of millions of others affected by his future actions would have gone a different way. These are examples of the butterfly effect, a small splash leading to a massive tidal wave. September 28, 1918. A British soldier, Private Henry Tandy, fighting near a French village, lines up a shot in his rifle. He sees it's a wounded German soldier and decides not to take the shot. The man was already injured, so he spared his life. Little did Henry know at the time, but the man he spared was 29-year-old Lance Corporal Adolf Hitler. Yes, this is yet another example of how our timeline would have drastically changed had a seemingly small change taken place. In retrospect, it's an easy decision to call, but in the heat of the moment, I'm sure Henry felt as though it was the right thing to do. There was no way he could have possibly known the ramifications of his one decision. But just like the butterfly effect, that one small change could have changed so much. When we talk about what caused the Mandela Effect, this is what we mean by time travel. Someone from the future traveling back in time and inadvertently or intentionally making small changes that over time create massive differences. This could explain small things like the dash in the Kit Kat bar, but also explain the massive and previously unknown historical events that now apparently happen, like the Black Tom explosion. Now, let's assume for a second that the Mandela Effect is 100% confirmed real and is caused by time travel and the butterfly effect. We're still left with many questions. Questions such as, do we still exist on the same timeline we started with? Such as the dynamic timeline theory? Or are all of these changes the result of jumping between parallel dimensions by means of the multiverse timeline theory? Is there even an original timeline? And if so, could we ever go back to it? And would we want to? Or would it be so different from what we expect that we wouldn't be able to mentally cope with the changes? Honestly, who knows? Someone watching this right now could be the first person to travel through time and inadvertently or intentionally break reality for the rest of us. It's highly unlikely, but it's still a spooky thought. Actually, now that I think about it, what if it's just a fan of the Mandela Effect in the future, going back in time and intentionally or unintentionally creating the Mandela Effect? And that all of this is just one hilariously disturbing time paradox. What if this video sets that idea into motion, and one of us ends up creating the very thing that we're talking about right now? If that's the case, could you please add a few more zeros to all of our bank accounts? I say this every time, but I could talk about and speculate on this stuff for hours and hours. It's all so fascinating to me, as I hope it is for you as well. If the Mandela Effect is caused by time travel, is it intentional? And if so, why? If not, then is it just a side effect of the butterfly effect? Or is the Mandela Effect simply a side effect of something much greater than all of us, and we're all just staring at clues instead of the bigger picture? So what do you think? Is time travel and the effects of the butterfly effect directly responsible for what we know today as the Mandela Effect? Without absolute evidence of time travel existing, we can really only speculate. But hey, that's the point of these videos. It's about laying out all the possible explanations of the Mandela Effect. Do you think time travel caused the Mandela Effect? Let me know in the comments. The simulation theory proposes that our entire reality is a highly advanced simulation. likely run by future humans, an advanced civilization, or something we can't even comprehend. In this theory, the Mandela Effect could be explained by patches or updates made to the simulation's code. Just like when a video game receives a software update that tweaks the world, characters, and stats, small edits to the simulation might retroactively alter history, geography, or spelling, without everyone immediately noticing. Big changes are pretty noticeable, but small ones, over time, can really sneak by. Some people's memories might stay the same because their local cache didn't update properly, creating conflicting realities. This could be the cause of the Mandela Effect. Another possibility is that the simulation runs multiple overlapping versions of reality simultaneously, and sometimes data bleeds between versions. This could help explain why certain people retain memories of events that seemingly never happened. If so, noticing Mandela effects might mean you're sensitive to glitches, as in you're sensitive to seeing the cracks in the program. I have a video called "We Live in a Simulation" that goes super deep into this topic. It's over 30 minutes of mind-blowing information that you've probably never considered before. Go check it out after this video, link in the description. Here's a theory few have really considered. What if the Mandela Effect is caused by something unknown? Something truly outside of the theories that we've considered? This mysterious unknown cause acknowledges that despite endless theories, we might not actually know what is behind the Mandela Effect. And that might be the most terrifying possibility of all. When you hear a noise in your house at night that you can't explain, that's pretty scary. When it comes to something so grand and mysterious as the Mandela Effect, it's terrifying. Perhaps it's something natural that has always existed, a hidden cosmic force, or dimensional phenomenon that we've only recently become aware of. Maybe it's the result of powerful forces like governments controlling psychological operations, intentionally rewriting history to control perception. But let's go even weirder. Alien interference, spiritual manipulation, or dimensional shifts that are simply beyond our current human understanding. The troubling truth is that the real cause could be something we aren't even equipped to comprehend yet. Something working silently in the background, reshaping our memories without us ever realizing how or why. You see, if we don't know what it is, if it is something unknown, it could be anything. This potentially unexplained cause of the Mandela Effects keeps us searching for answers, but maybe the true cause is something we can't yet comprehend. It's a troubling thought, but it absolutely could be the case. Let's talk about pop culture. Pop culture permeates through society. Just think about all the movies, TV shows, and cultural events you've witnessed in your own life. You could have been quoting a movie for years now and not even realized it was from a movie. The idea of pop culture contaminating the zeitgeist isn't some unfounded idea. It happens every day, with every reference to something that happened in the past. A misquote, a joke, a parody, these things could potentially be the cause of the Mandela Effect, by subtly reprogramming our memories.
It ain't easy being cheesy.
Who is this ghastly man?
Ace Ventura, pet detective. And you must be the Monopoly guy.
Thanks for the free parking. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200.
And countless memes often parody famous quotes, historical moments, or characters, sometimes slightly twisting details for humor. Over time, these distorted versions may overwrite the originals in our collective memory. When you think of Darth Vader, do you remember "Luke, I am your father," even though that's not actually the line? That quote wasn't invented by faulty memory. It was repeated in countless shows, jokes, and references until it became the version lodged in our brains. Now, like every explanation in this video, these are theories, and for every box that each one of these theories checks, they also leave a bunch of boxes unchecked. Could this explain the entirety of the Mandela Effect? No, probably not, but it's an interesting theory nonetheless. This theory certainly explains some Mandela effects, but it can't explain all of them. There are changes to geography, anatomy, history, and obscure facts that pop culture could hardly have touched. So while media contamination plays a role, it doesn't tell the full story. And that's what makes the Mandela Effect so mysterious and interesting. What do you think? The last theory I want to talk about today is AI. My AI manipulation theory proposes that the true cause of the Mandela Effect is artificial intelligence. From the small things to the massive things, AI is quietly and relentlessly rewriting history. In our modern world, AI systems already curate the news we see, the posts we interact with, and the ideas we believe are trending. They filter, frame, and shape how we perceive reality. But what if that's only the surface? AI has the unprecedented power to manipulate facts, rewrite history, alter data records, and inject false memories into the public consciousness without anyone noticing. Well, except for us. It's a scary thing to consider, but I also believe it's a legitimate thing to consider. Publicly facing AI is unbelievably powerful and capable. Now imagine the ones they don't show us and what they can do. Imagine how long they've had them and what they've been using them for. And it doesn't stop there. Governments, corporations, and powerful actors possess advanced versions of AI we can't even comprehend. Capable of large-scale psychographic profiling, targeted disinformation campaigns, cognitive warfare, and mass perception control. Think of it like this. The dead internet theory is the icing on the AI cake. That means we have barely taken a bite. Everything you say, post, like, share, record, it's all fed into massive machine learning models that know you better than you know yourself. They know what you did, they know what you think, and they know what you're going to do with an insane degree of certainty. Reality, for most people, isn't reality anymore. It's what the AI wants you to see. We are living through the greatest information war in history, where AI isn't just a tool, it's the battlefield, the soldier, the weapon, and we are the civilians who are confused, controlled, and targeted constantly. The Mandela Effect is the symptom of a world where reality is no longer fixed. Objective truth is simply an inconvenience. Our institutions have failed us, and people flock to anyone who can make them feel better. It's been broken, twisted, and rewritten by forces so advanced and invisible that the vast majority will never notice. The fact that you've made it this far into my video shows you're already ahead of most people. So congrats. Listen, the unsettling truth is that AI can already change and manipulate reality. Not by shifting dimensions, but by altering what people perceive to be real. The Mandela Effect is what we call the strange idiosyncrasies we see in the world, but can't make sense of. They are the smoke before the fire, the canary in the coal mine, the cough before the sickness. History is no longer written by the winners. It's edited by the algorithms. So there you go. Those are my 10 possible explanations for what caused the Mandela Effect. Which one do you think it is, and why? Let me hear it in the comments. I love reading what everybody thinks. That's always the most fun part of this job. Until next time, never stop searching.